Yair Parashat Mishpatim, 17 days to Purim. Yair she'alimud refuat Tanya bat Hoda Magalit, Yosef Yair ben Aviva Chava, Harav Sivan ben Sima, Leah bat Metel betoch kol shar cholei Israel. In preparation for Purim, in 17 days, we're going to start our journey in trying to understand the war against Amalek. The war against Amalek is essentially the main idea of Purim. Purim we're celebrating because the war that we fought in those days has never ended. And so, to understand the war against Amalek, that we're going to go back to Shemot Perek Yud Zayin, where the story all began. Am Yisrael leave Mitzrayim very confident of their future. They know they're going, they know they're succeeding, they know they've left slavery, they're all excited, and with all of that excitement and all of that success, Amalek appeared. And when Amalek appeared, the most interesting thing about the war against Amalek is that we don't hear about the war tactics, we do not hear about the casualties, we hear about one essential thing. The main thing that appears in the story of the war against Amalek is the hands of Moshe. And if we're thinking to ourselves, if it's such an essential war, who actually cares about Moshe's arms? And not only that, but if we've learned Tanakh literature, we know that there's a concept called Milah Mancha. Milah Mancha means a word that appears, according to one of the commentators named Kasuto, 7 times. That is considered a defining word of a story. And in the war against Amalek, what doesn't appear is the concept of the war, why Amalek even came. We don't even know. What was the purpose of the war? We don't know. But what we do know is that Moshe's hands appear 7 times. Which means that the center of the war of Amalek was not the war, but the concept of Moshe's hands. And so what we're going to do now is learn a midrash about these arms of Moshe, a famous midrash, but see the questions of the Sfat Emet, and therefore transform that midrash to a totally different level of what the war against Amalek is really all about. So the last Shabbat I had the zchut to learn with the Chatan, Moriv Rabbi Akiva Blumenthal. And we learned this midrash, and for me it was one of the greatest miracles, because I was sitting with an actual walking Sfat Emet, because all the questions that we're going to see in the Sfat Emet were the questions that came from Akiva. So, Baruch Hashem, just to give a bracha to the Chatan, Rebbe Akiva, we should always be zoche to understand a midrash on such a level that we realize that there's more going on than what it seems like. So the midrash says, Vayak asher yarim Moshe. Whenever Moshe picked up his hands, that's what the pasuk says. Amru Chazal v'ki yadav shel Moshe osot milchama. Questions the midrash. What do we see in the war? In the war, Am Yisrael are down there in the war zone. And the leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, is on top of the mountain. And on top of that mountain, he picks up his hands. And when his hands are up, they're winning the war. And when his hands are down, Amalek is winning the war. And so says the Midrash, a very obvious question, seriously, do you actually think that Moshe's arms can do war? When he picks up, what is it, like a kindergarten game? Pick up the hands, we win. Put down the hands, we lose. Since when do you think that Moshe's arms are the concept of what's going to win a war? How dare you? Says the Midrash. To the Torah. Bemet. Ela lomar lecha. No, don't. It's not that his hands were doing the war. Ela lomar lecha bizman sheYisrael mistaklin klapei mala. In the time that Am Yisrael look up towards Moshe's hands, but not to his hands, but through his hands, they look upwards. Then, mishavdin livan lavim shabashamayim hayumit gabrin. So it wasn't that Moshe's arms were actually in a mystical way winning the war. It's that conceptually, when Moshe would pick up his arms, the nation would realize that it's not our yadayim that are winning the war, but Moshe's arms going up are saying, whatever you're fighting, whatever you're doing, you're in a tank in Lebanon, you're going into a Mechabel's house in Gaza, whatever it is. Ella, look upstairs, look upwards, and say Hashem is winning the war. That's the Midrash. Comes Akiva Blumenthal and the Sfat Emet. and asks three major questions on this midrash. First question sounds like this: V'kasheh, I don't understand. Ma kushiyah v'kizeh bilvad asu lanu yadav. Screams the Sfat Emet and Akiva and say like this: I'm sorry, your question sounds like a good question, but it makes no sense. Why does it make no sense? Last parak, we split the sea. Moshe stood with his arm and hit the thing. No one asked the question. V'ki yedei Moshe korot yam. And in Aseret Makot, we saw that Moshe's arm threw things up to the sky, hit Niles, and blood came out, and frogs were squirting out. No one said V'ki yadav shel Moshe osot makot. But here we get to the war against Amalek. Son of the Midrash gets all angry. What? Oh my God! Really, Moshe's arms can do a war? So says the Sfat Emet, I don't understand your problem. Moshe's arms have done many things before. Why are you so nervous about his arms winning the war against Amalek? You didn't ask that question, Kriya Yamsuf. You didn't ask that question, Aseret Makot. So that's question number one. Question number two, the Sfat Emet, he says, V'kiyadav shel Moshe milta zutreininu. I don't understand. What do you think? Moshe was like a random guy? He was like another, Pinchas or Moshe ben Avram Yitzchak, whatever it was, walking around the street, picking up his hands. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. What are you all upset about? Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu was a miraculous person, was a leader, was a huge person, and yes, his arms raised in tefillah can win a war. What are you so, getting all crazy about? And the third question, so deep, says the Sfat Emet, Im ken de yadav shovrot milchama pshita de lo haya meniach yadav. Says the Sfat Emet, I'm sorry. But yes, raising your arms for 2 days is difficult. But if Moshe Rabbeinu knows that when his arms go down, a Jewish person's going to die, do you actually think that he would ever put his hands down? They tell famous stories about Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kohen Cook, that in the 6-day war would sit in his room for hours and just cry, so that not one soldier would be hurt. That's where Tzvi Yehuda Kohen Cook, realizing, no, if there's a Jew in war, I'm not going to put my hands down, I'm not going to go to sleep, I'm not going to drink my coffee, I'm not going to drink my tea, I'm going to daven from sunset to sundown, and from sundown to sunset, that no one dies. I'm not going to put my hands down. And so it says the Midrash, when Moshe's hands went up, they won the war, but if Moshe put his hands down, they lose the war. Screams the Sfat Emet, I'm sorry. But Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of the Jewish people, the one that was willing to give his own life, the one that was killing all of his pride that he had in Beit Paro for the Jewish people, suddenly here to pick up his hands, going to go, oh no, I have to put my hands down and the Jew's going to get killed? So to finish off this year, I just want to summarize the three questions. And then, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll continue into the answer. We know that the story against Amalek was a war where the main emphasis is Moshe's arms. The way that we know that it is because Moshe's arms appear 7 times. But not only that, but nothing else appears. In the war, we don't know why Amalek came. We don't know if we won, if we lost. But we do know that Moshe was standing on a mountain picking up and lived. That's what I want to know about the war. So Kanir'eh, the Midrash understands that Yedei Moshe are a much greater symbol. It wasn't a kindergarten game. Simon says, pick up your hands, put it down. No. This was a serious concept. And this was the war against Amalek, Moshe's arms, being up and being down. And so the questions of the Midrash was, do you really think that Moshe's arms can do a war? No. It's that when he would pick up his arms, it was a symbol for the Jewish people to look up to Hashem and realize, you're not really fighting the war. You have to realize that Hashem is fighting the war. That's a nice Midrash. But the Sfat Emet has 3 huge questions. Question number 1, the Sfat Emet says, why here do you ask the question? Moshe's arms have been active throughout Yetziat Mitzrayim, in the Etzer Makot, in Kriya Yamsuf. There no one asked. Suddenly we get to the war against Amalek, you're like, oh, serious? Could it be that Moshe's arms are doing the war? But we didn't ask it before. So the first question was, why do you specifically ask about Moshe's hands in the war against Amalek? The second question was, Moshe's arms are not just a regular person's arms. And his arms are obviously a symbol of great concept of giving to Hashem or letting go of taking responsibility over everything and thinking that you could do everything. So his arms are not a minor thing. So why do you suddenly say, what? Seriously, Moshe's arms? Yes, Moshe's arms are a serious thing. They're not a minor thing. That was the second question. But the third is, for me personally, the favorite question. If Moshe knows that when he puts his arms down, a Jewish person will die, do you really think that Moshe would put his arms down? With those three questions, will lead us into this next Shabbat at our families, Bezrat Hashem, to think a little bit, what was this concept that the Midrash was saying in Shmot Perek Yud Zayin, the war against the Amalek, really teaching us about the war. And Bezrat Hashem, next week we'll continue to try and hear a little bit of a new understanding about what Amalek was really about, what we're really preparing for as we approach Purim. And so we should enjoy the question for the next week.